Hey guys, so I jammed up my knee at the skate park this past weekend. I've got a really bad sprain, so I think I need to stay off of it for a bit. I'm definitely going to be sidelined from skateboarding for a couple of weeks. So today we're channeling that skateboarding energy indoors, and we're going to dive into this stash of marketing material I have from back in the day. And this is mostly a bunch of letters and brochures and stuff that I got from writing to companies, asking them from stickers. And it's really cool to reflect back how brands back in the day used to interact with us via mail before social media was a thing. I got a couple of price sheets from back in the day, like this one here from Vision. This is full of all kinds of prices for decks and all the different components and accessories. And it's fun to look back at these 1987 prices and compare those to current prices, especially after you factor in inflation. And you might be really surprised just how far your skateboarding dollar goes today compared to back then. So yeah, I don't know if you guys did this in school or if it was unique to me, but around the third grade or so, our teacher in class had us write a letter to a different brand. So each kid would write to a different brand, and we would ask for them to send samples or product or something to each of the kids in our class. There were about 20 of us. And so yeah, it was fun to write those off, and then a few weeks later things would trickle in. We'd get things like bags of chips or cookies or stickers or whatever. And not everybody got a response, but there was enough that it made it fun, and it was always a surprise, a few weeks later to see if anything came in. And so when I was a little bit older and got into skateboarding, and I'd be flipping through like the Thrasher magazines, and I'd see ads for brands, and if they included their address, that was usually a sign for me to go ahead and write them a letter, just like I did in the third grade, and ask for stickers or an autograph from the skater or whatever. And a lot of them went unanswered, but occasionally I would get something back in the mail, and it'd usually be like a letter with a brochure or a couple of stickers. So that's really cool. So most of the stickers I stuck on decks and whatever back in the day, and a lot of the other stuff is gone, but somehow I managed to hang on to a few different things. So I thought it'd be fun to share those with you guys today. Let's start with Powell Peralta, because this stuff is really cool. And I remember writing to them multiple times back in the day, and sometimes you might get a letter back, sometimes you might get a postcard or some stickers or whatever. Eventually I ended up on their mailing list, and they did like an intelligence report that they would send out from time to time. And eventually I also ended up joining their Bones Brigade Club, and they would send stuff from time to time as part of that. And you got a t-shirt and one of these patches. They re-released these this past summer, but this one here is an OG one that I got back in the day. And you might get some more stickers and some like covers for your school books and stuff. And it was really cool. And I just love how Powell Peralta interacted with us. Here's one of the letters that I have from Powell Peralta. It's on their official letterhead here. It's got signatures by George and Stacy on here. I wish they were legit autographs, but they're just copies. But it's still really cool. It's dated November 1st, 1988, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll put it up on screen. But in a nutshell, they're thanking people for sending in their contributions to the next issue of the Bones Brigade Intelligence Report, which is basically their mailing list that they had back in the day. And then they're doing a little bit of hype up for their next video, the Bones Brigade Video 4, Public Domain, which is pretty cool because that was one of my favorites back in the day. And it's cool to see this kind of marketing propaganda for that before the video actually came out. So yeah, I love this letter. And then we've got some of these postcards here. I didn't get them all at the same time, but obviously my favorite is going to be this Rodney Mullen here. I always loved him, and of course he's become such an icon and legend today. But the other reason I like it is it's got this handwritten note by somebody named Melanie there, and she says, "Hey dude," with a little skateboard she drew. "Thanks for writing. You're now on our Way Cool mailing list, so keep checking your mailbox for stuff. Keep thrashing, your friend Melanie at Powell." And it's really cool because it's got a stamp of the winged ripper here on the back, as well as a couple of postal cancellations with the Santa Barbara. It's dated December 5th, 1988, and so this is really cool. And then I never met them, so I believe I got these through the mail as well. This is Jim Thiebaud autograph and his postcard, and then I've got Brandon Chapman here as well. And then this Ray Barbie was blank when I received it. And so if you've watched any of my other skate-related stuff, you may remember me chatting about this, attending one of the Bones Brigade demos. But I don't know how why I did it this way, but I brought these to the demo, and I probably didn't bring this one. But I have Rodney Mullen, his autograph here on the back of the Ray Barbie one. And then on the Jim Thiebaud one, I've got Tommy Guerrero and Ray Barbie. So I don't know why I didn't have Ray Barbie sign the Ray Barbie one. Oh, and Mullen signed the Mullen one, probably because this had all this writing on the back. I don't know. But that's the way it played out, and I'm still stoked to have these. These are some of my most prized possessions from back in the day. And then next up, we've got Tracker. And this is really interesting. I sent off to them, and I'm sure I got a few stickers, and then along with this sheet here. And on the back side, it's got some propaganda for the Tracker 6 tracks and, marketing spiel for it. But what's fun is on the other side, there's a questionnaire, a survey, and it talks about different, lots of questions you might expect. But one of the things that stood out is what types of skating do you prefer? And then you're supposed to rank them in order of preference. And they've got freestyle, bowl, pool, slalom, downhill, and then ramps. And the box for street is non-existent. So it's kind of fun to think back. In 1987, street skateboarding was still in its infancy, and it wasn't big enough that they felt like they should add a box here. So I'm sure people filled that in as other. But I was thinking it might be kind of cool I want to keep this, but maybe photocopy it and actually fill it out and then mail it back to whatever Tracker's address is today and say like, hey guys, sorry it took me 37 years to fill this back or fill it out and get it back to you, but I hope you find this input valuable. Thanks. And then see if they respond, and that would be kind of a fun exercise. So I'll probably do that too. Okay, next up, let's go to Alva. Alva's always been one of those kind of cool core brands led by Tony Alva himself, and they clearly didn't have the marketing budget that some of the bigger brands like Powell Peralta and Vision had, and I'm actually looking back kind of surprised that they responded. I'm sure I got a couple of stickers with this, but this is kind of like a terrible quality photocopy of his little letter with Tony's autograph that was photocopied onto it, as well as a couple of price sheets. And it's kind of interesting here that they say price list, but there are no prices anywhere. And they also say prices subject to change as of January 1988. But it's still kind of fun to look back at the decks they had and what their dimensions were, and the decals and stickers or shirts they had available. So this is really cool. And then we have another low budget response. This one's from Kryptonics. It's also a photocopy, and at some point they had put the sales manager, whoever Barry Lowe is, but put his business card and photocopied it together, and it says, thank you for your interest in crypto, skate hard and have fun. So Kryptonics, obviously an iconic brand, especially in the late 70s. By the late 80s, they were kind of irrelevant, but still kind of, again, fun, cool piece of skateboarding history. And then next up, we've got this Vision Streetwear. And so this is really cool. This is kind of glossy. And on one side, we've got Vision Streetwear t-shirts, which is kind of cool. And then here on the other side is more of like the Vision Brands t-shirts. And we've got, guys from like Gator and Mark Gonzalez and Joe Johnson and Jinx. But yeah, some really cool stuff. The other thing they sent was this sheet from Vision Streetwear shoes. I had a pair of the leather or suede streetwear back in the day, and I love those, but I eventually ended up really liking the Airwalk prototype shoes. So I only had one pair of these Vision Streetwear, and very cool. But here on the back side, it's got the suede versions and some of the other streetwear stuff. So this is really cool. And then we got some fun price sheets here. And one thing to note is that these prices here are direct from Vision. And I think they're a little bit pricey for the era. And so luckily I've got this ad that was from a Thrasher magazine that's from California Hot a little bit earlier that same year. But I think these prices are a little bit more typical. And so we'll totally dig through this. It'll be a lot of fun. But when we consider inflation, we'll use this as kind of our more kind of like realistic price reference. Okay, so this Vision price list is really cool here. I'll put some of this stuff up here on the screen. But yeah, we've got Vision skateboards, we've got Sims, we've got Schmidt sticks, Tracker, Santa Cruz, Uncle Wiggly, Dogtown. Really iconic names here. And these decks were all, again, these prices were probably a little expensive compared to the others, but anywhere from $48.50, some of them were like $39. But yeah, all different prices, but around the $40 to $50 price point here. And then we've got trucks. Prices, just, a whole bunch of independent. They've had Gullwing, Thunder, and ACS. I don't remember ACS trucks. I remember ACS, and I don't know if it's the same brand for the BMX stuff with like the rotors and whatnot, but we've got ACS and Venture. I remember that Venture trucks were considered kind of crappy. Thunder were kind of in between. But yeah, most kids either had independent, Tracker, or Gullwing, so it's cool. So generally in here, prices range from around 12 or 13 bucks all the way up to like maybe 20, 23 bucks for different trucks. So that's interesting. We've got hardware, we've got bearings, and kind of everybody remembers the German GMN. That was kind of like the standard back in the day. And they were priced per bearing, not for a set. Grip tape was for a 10-inch black was $1.75 a foot, and so you'd probably need 2.5 feet back then. We had die-cut grip tape. They call them truck protectors, but of course we had copers and all the different brands from $2 to whatever. We had all different types of rails, the swizzle sticks, the Schmidt sticks, ugly sticks. We've got the nose rail, the nose guards, the elephant wrench. I still have one of those. We've got all the different wheels. Wheels were sold individually, generally around $6 to $7. Some of them a little bit cheaper, like these Sim Street wheels for $4. OJ2s, $6. The Hosoi rockets were $7.50. Bullets were $7.50. So, actually, I guess the most expensive wheels on here were the Vision, Nucleus, the Protons, and Newtons at $9 a piece, which is still, interesting that prices today aren't that much more expensive for the wheels. And we've got skid plates, the tailbones, little post. You could have got a poster for anywhere from $2 to $3. We had VHS tapes. Those were still kind of expensive back then. $15 up to $30 for a VHS tape, which seems kind of crazy. Rector stuff, helmets, t-shirts, all kinds of stickers, anywhere from 25 cents up to $1, 35 cents, all different prices. They had some complete decks. This is interesting because these retail prices are pretty cheap. The one, my buddy had one of these punk skulls, but $80. So again, that's $215 or whatever today. But some of these, like the Vision Ripper, ACS trucks, Vision wheels, $55, not too bad. And then in the back, they had kind of a way for you to build your complete. And so the typical with the $49 board with an independent trucks, you would add that package for $70. So you're paying basically $120 for a deck from them, or a board from them back in the day. But yeah, pretty interesting stuff. But let's take a minute and compare the prices after inflation, and are these still a good deal today? And one thing to do is I looked online, and the purchasing power of $1 in 1987 is equivalent to $2.69 today. And we've had an average inflation rate of 2.79% per year, and that gives us a cumulative price increase of 169%. So to compare that to today's dollars, we can take the prices back then and then multiply them by that 169% and kind of get a relative price after inflation. So I made a couple of mistakes on this sheet, like the label's wrong or whatever, and I had a couple of things that I had to hand correct. But basically this is an Excel sheet where I built some formulas, but I put in prices for components back in the day in 1987 from this California hot sheet. And then I factored in that 169% to say if it cost $40 back in the day, what would that cost with inflation today? And then I compared what the average going price for one of those components retail if you walked into a skate shop today, and then looked how much, what is the price difference? You get more value today versus then or not? And I was really shocked, actually. Typical deck price in 1987 was about $40, and after inflation, that would be $107.50 today. And in reality, I felt like deck prices really kind of shot up over the pandemic. And so looking around, you could probably say an average price is $85 for a deck. But that's 21% cheaper than what a 1987 deck would have been after inflation. So it's interesting to see, even though inflation has happened on skateboarding, it hasn't happened as much in other areas. and it's a bit cheaper to be a skater today than it was back then. A couple other things that stood out is a complete deck back in the day would have been about $100 or so, which would be the equivalent of basically $269 today, which seems kind of crazy. Like, I don't think I would want to pay that much for a full setup today. I did a little bit of math over here, and you could probably get a decent, good quality setup for $221 today. And so that's about 22% cheaper today to get a complete than it would have in 1987. Some of the other things that stood out is independent trucks 169s. They were $31.80 for a pair back then. That would be the equivalent of $85 today, which seems crazy. I would not pay $85 for a pair of independents. They go more around $53, so they're 38% cheaper than they were back in the day, relatively speaking. And the average reel was about $24 for a set of 4, which would be about almost $65 today. And then typically, again, I looked around $38 seems to be a good average. So wheels are about 41% cheaper after inflation today, which is also interesting. It's crazy to think that across the board that inflation hasn't affected the skate industry as much as other areas in our lives. And after you adjust for inflation, a complete setup is about 20% cheaper today. And some of the components like the wheels and the trucks are even closer to 40% cheaper than 1987 prices. That's pretty wild. If you're surprised by any of these pricing changes, let us know in the comments and kind of what you're thinking. The next question, and it's one that I really can't answer, is why? Were there really that many more skaters in 1987 compared to today? And was demand so much higher that they were able to charge so much more? Or did they move enough manufacturing overseas that they passed on the savings to us customers? I highly doubt that. And so who knows why it's cheaper. If you do know, let us know down in the comments. I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. It's fun to reflect back on the 80s skate industry and think about what's changed and what hasn't changed. And prices really haven't risen as much as you might have expected, and that's really cool. And we've mostly done away with all those weird accessories and gimmicks like lappers and copers and cell blocks and rip grip and tailbones and nose bones and all that stuff. And of course, the trends of shaped decks versus popsicle decks have come and gone. But at its true core, skateboarding is timeless and its essence hasn't changed. For a fun exercise, I think I'm going to write to some of the skateboard companies and ask them for some stickers or autographs and just see if any of them respond like they did back in the day. And I'll keep you guys posted on that. And then until then, keep rolling with the memories, and we'll catch you in the next video. And let's keep our fingers crossed that we get some new stickers. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.